Hi folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. Apologies for not uploading vids more regularly. It's been quite a hectic week, so I'll try and do some extra vids today to make up for it. Now, in this essay, I'd like to talk about launching off the recent district election for a federal seat in federal parliament in the UK. It's the gorton-denton by-election, which was won quite handsomely, by the way, or supposedly won by the Greens. And launching off that to look at what a multicultural society does with democracy and the vote and so on, and how invariably it goes into, particularly given that integration has been an utter and total failure, voting goes along sort of ethnic and religious lines rather than on policy lines. Now, democracy is a very unique Western thing. You don't really see it around the place. There are some different levels of power sharing arrangements, but really the idea of the democratic process, where you see the early vestiges of it in, say, ancient Greece or ancient Rome, up until the modern day. And bear in mind that universal franchise has only been around for 100 or so years. So even that's relatively new in the overall scheme of things. So, but democracy developed in amongst very homogenous Western societies, and in societies that respected power sharing agreements and contractual agreements. Let's all agree on the rules. And we all agree to abide by those rules. And it's a homogenous society believing in independent courts and the rule of law, the rules, Christian conscience and ethics, and the things that come from that, such as the fairness of due legal process. Now, these things are very uniquely Western. You see little bits and pieces of it around the rest of the world, but as a package, is very uniquely Western. Only in the West did you find that collection of ideals, beliefs, views, and concrete policies, elected governments, and so on. Now, that's fallen to pieces. It was already under great stress from the globalists that didn't want a power sharing arrangement with the populace, and therefore sought to subvert Western democracy. And the part of the subversion, in fact, the central plank of that subversion process, was mass migration and non-integration and non-assimilation. Very much part of the globalist gig. Now, in Britain, and I've just actually made got some numbers here, did a bit of a dive into finding the numbers, which are pretty consistent all across the Western world, because there's only white countries that are being subverted like this. Only the white countries are being targeted by the globalists for this sort of subversion. Now, parties of the left 100% support the globalist program. This is mass migration, open borders, LGBTQ, transgenderism, and green energy, so that the energy prices have to be 10 times higher than they need to be, and for all the fantasy of supposedly saving the planet and this sort of thing. All of them are measures of Western subversion, by the way. They're designed and put together to subvert the West at every level. But if you look at, like, in the mass migration side of it, pretty much all the imported people support mass migration. Now, the parties of the left are the ones, so it's the Greens and Labour and some of the smaller parties, the Liberal Democrats in Britain and so on. But it goes like this, and it's very consistent. Between 80 and 85% of black people vote left parties, Labour, Greens, that sort of thing. It's slightly higher amongst Islamic people. So, and this is all the Islamic folks, including Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, and so on, Syria, I don't know all that. And it's between 85 and 90% of the Islamic people vote parties of the left, and about 65% of Indians vote for parties of the left. other non-whites of all sort of descriptions vote left parties about 75%. Now, if you lump all together this is a huge voting bloc. If you lump all this together in terms of votes and say that 35% of Britain is, I think it's more than that, but say 35% of voting age adults are not English white, then they're going to vote overwhelmingly parties of the left. Well, why do they vote parties of the left? Well, it's for handouts and giveaways and free housing, free this, free that, free whatever, but also things like the Pakistanis and the Islamic people from those, Bangladesh and Afghanistan. They're all very big on marrying their cousins and procreating with their cousins. It's very much part of their culture, even though 25% plus of children are born handicapped because of it. And if you've got a problem with that, you fucking Nazi. So the parties of the left agree, it's a wonderful thing having so many handicapped children from unions between cousins, so that the importing of brides, the importing of husbands and all the sort of thing from the village of the ancestors, bringing out relatives to come and stay, aunts, uncles, the whole fucking village, second cousins, the list goes on. That's all supported. Again, the parties of globalist control who are subverting the West, because these things all subvert Western society, and so the globalists are totally on board with it. So these people are brought in, and from vastly different cultures. They want to continue their cultural habits. They want to continue that. They want to create ghettos. They want to do that, and this is all fully supported by the globalists, who, of course, then in return for all that patronage, all those handouts, all those gimmies, the freebies. Remember, these are people mostly illiterate third world peasants. They don't even understand where money comes from. And so if you want to keep on giving me free stuff, fine, that's that, and I'll vote for that. But when the free stuff runs out, then you're of no use to me, they'll say. And that day, I think, is arriving quicker than many people imagine. But the point being is that no imported group of people, not a single one from a non-white background, not a single one of them wants to vote on the policies. They'll vote along ethnic and religious lines, and that's it. They are special pleading. We want you to uniquely give us freebies. We want a freeload of you. We want to freeload the fuck out of Britain, out of the UK. And we vote for any party that will allow us to freeload the fuck out of the UK, which is exactly what's happening here. Now, white people, that have grown up in a white society, once homogenous society, they will vote primarily, not exclusively, but primarily on the policies. What policies does the government have regarding creating jobs, fixing the roads, collecting the garbage, and those sorts of things? What policies does the government have? And they'll vote on a policy basis, but none of the others do or will. So this creates a situation where democracy was designed, it was created, it was invented, it grew organically for a homogenous society that would vote on the policies. And that society has almost gone. And so democracy can no longer work when the building blocks of democracy are no longer there. A homogenous society that's all in agreement about the rules. None of these people, but the amount of people that say, well, I know I live in England or in the West, but I follow the law of the rules of Islam. Your laws mean nothing. Your courts, your politicians, they mean nothing to me. The Imam tells me what to do. If I'm in doubt about what I refer to the Quran. I don't listen to your fucking bullshit. I'm here to freeload off you. And if you're stupid and dumb enough to keep on giving me free shit, then I'll stay. The day you stop all the free shit, then I'll go. So we're looking at where millions of people are being, tens of millions being brought into the West who have no loyalty to the tradition, the systems, the laws, the structures, anything to do with the West. They are just here to freeload, and they're determined to act, and in this case, do bullshit voting in their own sectional interests without the scant scant is the slightest regard for anyone else or any other group. It's not a recipe for a cohesive society or a unified society, and things are spiraling out of control, as you would imagine, given the observed. But again, that's the globalist project: subvert Western society. That's it. That's the goal. That's the objective, and they're succeeding handsomely, I would argue, in that. So let's have a look at the gorton-denton by-election in the UK. Well, the Greens won it by quite a decent margin, by the way, assuming the votes were legitimate, and there's certainly some questions over that. The Greens won by about 4,000 votes, and the allegation is that somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 votes are suspect. So I don't know if there'll be a proper investigation in that. The globalists are in control of all the machinery that would vet and monitor these elections. So I doubt they'll, even if they discovered widespread fraud and corruption and misdeeds of varying description, I doubt they'd do anything. They want this outcome, the globalists. Because if the Labor Party doesn't win, the party of the left, if the Labor Party in the UK doesn't win, then whoever wins, they want to be a party or a group that's on board with the globalist project, mass migration, LGBTQ, and teaching trans insane ideology to 5-year-old kids, the green energy, all this sort of stuff is what the globalists want. And they don't particularly care which stooge party does it for them, whether it's Greens or Labor or Conservative or anyone else. But they want control of that, and the Greens allow the globalists to maintain control. So the globalists, I'd say, be very happy with the outcome in the gorton-denton by-election. The Greens put up this 1970s flower power hippie chick, who's a fucking moron, by the way, and she's supposed to have won the election with policies. They were even doing election adverts in Pakistani language. Fuck. That's how far. Did anyone imagine that when they were putting together the system of British democracy? Imagine that it would be in every other language, apart from English. Nobody foresaw that. So it just goes to show how far the respect for democracy has gone. It's gone. These globalists and the Pakistanis, Bangladesh, they've got no respect for democracy. They don't give a fuck about it. So how democracy is meant to survive when it's sneered at, contemptuously sneered at by everyone other than the white people. Now, Reform Party, who came second. Now, this is in a very Labor area, by the way. Labor has won this particular electoral district for as long as anyone can remember. So it's a surprise to not have a Labor member there. But Labor did quite respectably. They got, I think, 8,000 or 9,000 votes in the area. The Reform Party got I think 10,000 or so votes and came second. But if you look at the sort of numbers, the votes that Labor lost and the Conservatives lost primarily went to the Greens. Now, if you break down the Greens voting, a very substantial proportion of the vote, there was a relatively high turnout of black people and Muslims and so on, where on a relative basis, quite a low turnout of white people and others. But the vote that the Labor Party lost just jumped across to the Greens. So the Greens and the Labor Party, there's no difference in their policies. So exactly, they all welcome mass migration, cousin marriage, bring your 99th cousins out and your whole fucking village out to, they're both completely on board with that. So for the globalists, it's a huge win. They go, yep, we won that one again. The Conservative Party was eradicated. I think they got just a few hundred votes. So, the Conservative Party is still paying for the Boris sellout. Boris Johnson was elected with a huge majority because he was seen as a gadfly. He would put those globalists to flight. He would stop the mass migration. He wouldn't allow this bullshit to continue. And then once he's in office, suddenly everyone realizes that he's actually a bigger globalist than Blair and Cameron and all the other prime ministers sitting. He's probably been the the most staunch globalist prime minister since the 1990s or in the history of Britain, and he sold out the people that voted for him. And the Conservatives, the Tory party in Britain, are still paying the price for that. What in my view was an unspeakable act of treachery. So now there's probably 25 to 35 districts in England where there's a very high a vote of black people, or because they live in ghettos, black people or Muslims or Pakistanis or whatever. There's a number, again, depending on whose numbers you want to look at, between 25 and 35. So I think the vote can only switch from Labor, because Labor is on the nose there, can only go from Labor to Greens in those districts. So I don't know if that outcome, as ridiculous and absurd as it is, could be replicated widely across England. I don't think it could be. So this would suggest that given the relative improvement of Reform's vote, that they could quite conceivably be the largest party, if not in outright government at the next federal election, which may come a bit earlier than we expect. The globalists will do tooth and nail to try and stop it. And I don't think Reform's a radical party at all, from what I've seen. Nigel Farage seems to be excessively pragmatic, depending on which way the wind is blowing. But I think they'll just deport enough. They'll lower migration substantially. That, I think, will happen. They'll deport just enough people to make it look like they're getting tough, but it won't be that many at the end of the day. So maybe they'll delay by 10 to 15 years the time frame in which white people will be a minority in Britain. But I'm not sure they're going to do much more than that. Maybe they will. I mean, let's hope, let's pray, but I'm not sure they will. A lot of the Conservatives that have moved to Reform were the big architects and exponents of mass migration during Boris Johnson's time. So why they'll suddenly decide that it's a bad thing now, where they thought it was a wonderful and good thing before, I don't know. But we'll see how that plays out. But we need to, I think, come to grips with the main thing is that democracy was organically created and invented and put together and constructed for a homogenous society that all agreed on how the rules would be arbitrated. Those Western societies have gone, and therefore the role democracy plays, even by having this level of sectarian vote, democracy is fatally undermined even by that. And I think that's where we are at the moment. And the only way to return to democracy is to return to, if not a homogenous vote, certainly where full integration of incoming peoples is achieved, and that's in itself a question for another video. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.